The events took place in Washington State in the late 1970s. Jack is a failed architect who dreams of building the perfect house as a symbol of his genius. But this is no ordinary house. Instead of bricks, he will use the bodies of his victims. In conversation with a mysterious man named Verge, a figure reminiscent of Virgil from Dante's Inferno, he recounts 5 incidents from the past 12 years. The first incident. Jack was driving far from the city when suddenly a woman stopped him by jumping out right in front of his car. Her car jack had broken, so she asked for help. But Jack said he didn't have a jack. He just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. She didn't know what to do, and Jack reluctantly agreed to give the woman a ride a few miles to a mechanic's shop he knew, run by a guy named Sonny. As they drove off, the woman said aloud that it was probably a mistake to get into a stranger's car, especially a van, which is convenient for transporting victims' bodies. She also noted that he looked like a maniac. Jack wasn't bothered by her comments at all, so she continued. The woman wondered what she would do in his place if she were a maniac. She would take a jack and just hit him over the head. They arrived at the location, and after dropping the woman off, Jack was about to drive away, but she persistently asked him to wait for her and drive her back to her car. Jack had no choice but to turn off the engine and wait while Sonny fixed the jack. On the way back, she kept talking about serial killers. Jack tried to fix her car using the jack that had just been fixed, but it broke again. Jack politely said he didn't have that much time and needed to get to a meeting, but the woman was pushy and asked him to take her back to Sonny's place again. She was getting more and more annoying with her tactlessness. On the way, she said Jack was too boring for a killer. That remark made Jack suddenly stop the car. His patience had run out, and he struck her with the jack, and so began his path of sin. Jack compares his own actions to Gothic art. He reflected that often the most beautiful art in cathedrals is hidden in the darkest corners, and so is he. Jack studied to be an engineer, but he always dreamed of being an architect. He bought a plot of land and planned to build the perfect house there. Jack has obsessive-compulsive disorder. He's obsessed with minute details. As a child, he was fixated on cleaning, and his room was perfectly tidy. He bought an abandoned cold storage facility on Prospect Avenue. The sign there had been broken long ago, so almost no one remembered what street it was. Jack took the woman's body there, into the freezer where there were countless pizzas left by the previous owner. There was a door that Jack couldn't open, so he didn't even try anymore. After that, Jack tried to hide the first victim's car in the woods, but it was still visible from the road. There was a spring there, which meant the state line ended there, so the location of the car shouldn't concern the local police. They were too indifferent for that. Jack saw Sonny a few times after that, but they never mentioned that woman. The second incident happened when Jack was driving his van again. He saw a woman walking along the road toward her home. It was Claire, the widow. Jack followed to her house. He rang her doorbell and pretended to be a police officer. Claire asked to see his badge, and Jack lied, saying his badge was at the jeweler's, to be re-engraved due to a promotion. He wanted to come inside, but she refused because she hadn't seen his badge. Jack simply said she had done the right thing and pointed out the certificate for Claire's late husband hanging on the wall. Jack asked about him and pretended he could help the woman get double her pension. She didn't understand, and now he was pretending to be an insurance agent. Suddenly, the woman's friend Glenn drove by in a car, and they greeted each other. Jack pretended he knew Glenn too, and eventually she agreed to let him inside. As soon as Jack entered, he started whining about how humiliating it was to be kept waiting at the door for so long. Suddenly, Jack attacked the woman and choked her, but she was still alive. Like a true psychopath, Jack began apologizing to his victim, gave her water and a donut he had with him, and attacked her with a knife. Jack sat her in a chair and took a photo. He moved the car closer to the house and hid her body in the van. He cleaned up the evidence of the crime in the house. Jack was already about to drive away, but because of his obsession with cleanliness, he imagined where else there might be traces of blood and returned to the house, but it was clean. He continued cleaning the room when suddenly he heard the sound of sirens. He quickly ran to the van, but because of his anxiety, he went back once more to check the house, and a police car pulled up. Jack quickly pulled the body out of the van and dragged it into the bushes behind the house. The officer noticed the van and asked him to open the back door. He began asking questions about the crime. Glenn had already told him he'd seen Claire with Jack, but Jack lied to the officer, saying she'd disappeared and he'd been waiting for her in the van for several hours. He lied, saying she'd gone into the house and never returned. The police officer called out for Claire, and Jack went inside the house with him. Due to his anxiety, he checked the room again to make sure it was clean. Jack lied that he had heard sounds of a struggle while sitting in the van. The police officer ordered him not to touch anything and to leave the house. Jack got angry and left. He quickly tied the woman's body to the van's handles. After making sure the police officer wasn't looking out the window, Jack drove away. The body left a trail of blood on the road, and when he reached the avenue, Jack noticed it and realized what a mistake he had made. Suddenly, out of nowhere, it started raining, a downpour even, which washed away all of Jack's traces. The man didn't believe in fate, but this time, he believed that higher powers were protecting him. While Jack was telling Verge all this, Verge called him a psychopath. But Jack realizes he is a psychopath, having long noticed his lack of empathy for people. To blend in with the crowd and live in society, he had to spend a long time studying and practicing how to show emotions. As a child, Jack loved watching the villagers mow the grass. Jack wanted to hide the body of his second victim. He tried again to open the locked door, but to no avail. After a few more murders, Jack felt that his obsessions had diminished, and he was more inclined to take risks. Jack recited Blake's poem about the tiger and the lamb to Verge. The tiger represents cruelty, the lamb represents innocence. The lamb is the tiger's victim, and Jack calls this the beauty of nature, referring to his own actions. Jack became completely reckless. He didn't even change the locations of his crimes, and Verge suspected that he even wanted to be caught. He photographed his victims as if they were mannequins. He was always fascinated by how light turns to darkness in black and white photographs. Jack anonymously sent the photos to a local newspaper, and the public dubbed him Mr. Sophistication. Verge thought that Jack's obsession left no room in his life for family or relationships, but he was wrong. It is precisely the theme of family that leads to the third incident. Over time, Jack had a girlfriend who had 2 sons from a previous marriage, George and Luke. They all went on a trip to the countryside together. George was thrilled, but Luke didn't want to go at all. Jack pulled out his rifle and showed it to the boys, even letting George hold the shotgun while telling him about how he used to go hunting. George wanted to climb the nearby tower. Jack climbed up with him and, using the rifles, hit the target, then explained which areas of the deer to aim for. The boy listened intently. In a conversation with Verge, Jack said that hunting animals is easier than hunting people. That day, Jack climbed the tower and began aiming at a woman and her sons. They hid and tried to run away, but Jack eliminated them one by one. He spared the woman's life and approached to arrange the bodies of the young victims for a picnic. He set up the entire scene and forced the woman to play by his rules and feed them pie. This once again revealed his horrific psychopathic nature, which he considered art. Finally, he asked her what her favorite number was, and she said 12. He gave her 12 seconds to walk away while he climbed the tower. She slowly and hopelessly stepped aside, and he fired. He savored the trail he left behind after the crime, no longer bothering to clean the blood from the scene. Jack approached the woman to check the body and shot her again. Now she was no longer alive. He began shooting the crows and created a composition of 50 birds, and the woman with her sons framed by fir leaves. Jack built a house, but later tore it down, redesigning everything from scratch and spending days and nights on it. Jack had horrific plans for Luke's body. Using whatever materials were at hand, he altered the boy's posture and turned him into a doll with a creepy smile. Jack approached the fourth incident even more cunningly. He pretended to be a man on crutches to look innocent. Yet another manipulation. Jack had a toxic relationship with a woman named Jacqueline. One day, Jack came to her house. She didn't want to look at him, so he placed a phone in front of her and, from another room, staged a phone conversation. She was naive and simple-minded, and he sweet-talked her. They quickly made up. He asked if she knew the difference between an architect and an engineer. She didn't see the difference. She wanted to know what Jack did for a living, and eventually, after drinking some alcohol, he told her honestly, he eliminates people. He already had 60 victims to his name. Jacqueline listened to this quite calmly, and he asked her to bring a marker. He undressed her and began drawing lines on her body. She called him strange and left the apartment. Jacqueline ran fearfully to an officer standing nearby and reported what had happened. The police officer didn't believe her, especially when he heard that the couple had been drinking. Jack came out and announced that everything this woman was saying was true. The indifferent officer told her to take her drunk friend away and drove off. Jack apologized to Jacqueline, and they went into the building. Suddenly, she noticed that the phone cord had been cut. Frightened, Jacqueline tried to quietly get up and leave the apartment, but Jack heard her. He had the keys to the door. She noticed that Jack was walking without a crutch and realized that he was the very Mr. Sophistication they write about in the newspapers. Jack said she could scream if she wanted to, and, mockingly, helped her scream even louder, as if begging for him to finally be caught.
It's Mr. Sophistication! Help!
But, in the end, no one responded. Her screams out the window were also in vain. Jack explained that in this country, no one cares about anything. He tied the girl up with a telephone cord. He complained that men are always seen as criminals and women as victims. After that, he traced the lines marked with a marker using a knife. He attached one of the woman's breasts to the windshield of a police car. In a conversation with Verge, Jack compared the decay of the human body to the process of grapes drying out and rotting. Over the years, Jack had torn down the frame of the house he'd been building for years 3 times. Jack used one of Jacqueline's breasts in a very specific way. He sewed a wallet out of it, which he calmly pulled out in public. The 5th incident began when Jack bought a box of ammunition at Al's store, where he had been buying weapons for the past 12 years. Jack brought his latest victim, a military man, to the avenue, though he was still alive. At gunpoint, he obeyed orders. He was merely part of the plan. 5 men were tied up in his freezer, now there were 6. Jack explained that during World War II, soldiers saved bullets and used a single 1 bullet to take out several people. He showed them the cartridge he would use in this experiment, and one of the soldiers pointed out that this cartridge wasn't a long-range round. It wouldn't fulfill Jack's wish. Then Jack realized that indeed the store had given him hunting cartridges, not long-range ones. He got angry, locked them up, and drove to the store in his van. He returned to Al and complained that the cartridges were wrong. The man was flustered and simply asked for the receipt, since he wasn't sure if the box had actually come from his store. He tensed up and asked Jack to show his ID, but the enraged psychopath just quickly stormed out of the store. The man called the police. Today, everything was going against Jack. While he was speeding to his friend SP, the co-owner of the gun shop, he veered off the road and got stuck. He ran to SP's trailer on foot and walked in without knocking. The man met him with a gun. SP said that yesterday the police had come to them with Al to arrest Jack. He had been exposed. With the gun muzzle pointed at him, Jack didn't move, and SP called the police. Jack sweet-talked him, saying that SP was like his best friend, so he was glad that it was him who caught him. SP poured him a drink and, letting his guard down, became his victim. Jack pulled out a knife and killed his old friend. From the closet, Jack pulled out the bullet he needed for his plan. A few minutes later, a police officer arrived. Jack put on SP's red robe, and from behind, the officer didn't realize it. Jack simply fired and killed the officer. He drove the police car to the Prospect Avenue. Jack loaded a long-range bullet into his rifle and began the experiment. However, he couldn't take aim. The distance was too close. He took a metal pipe to open the locked door, which he had never opened in all those years. Meanwhile, a police siren could be heard on the street from the car he had left near the entrance. Because of this, Jack didn't hear another police car pull up. Suddenly, as Jack takes aim once more, he hears a voice from the darkness. He turns on the light and sees Verge sitting in the corner. The man claims he has been following Jack for a long time. He simply asked Jack if he had built his dream house. Jack heard the voice of an approaching police officer. Verge hinted to him that he was building a house with the wrong materials, which is why nothing was working out. Jack set out to turn the idea into reality. He would build a house out of the bodies, trophies he had accumulated over the years. He constructed the house of bodies, hoisting some of them up on hooks. Verge stepped inside, followed by Jack, when suddenly the police drilled a hole in the door and shot Jack in the back. Now Jack faced a descent into hell. He and Verge heard a buzzing sound. It was the overlapping screams of people from hell. This was a reference to the Kola Super Deep borehole, where, according to legend, screams from hell could be heard. Through the window, he and Verge saw peaceful fields, but they were forbidden to enter. There, people were peacefully mowing the grass, just as in Jack's memories. He recalled all his victims, his sins. They walked to the last circle of hell, where a bridge lay in ruins. There was a staircase. It was the way out of hell. Despite Verge's warning not to take any risks, Jack wanted to try and reach the stairs. He said goodbye to Verge. Jack tries to climb up the rocky wall to reach the stairs. He fails and falls straight into the deepest part of hell, treachery, where will remain forever. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Movie Fist channel so you don't miss out on interesting movie plots.